Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Well, hello and welcome to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and today we've got a very special guest. His name's Jonathan Crawford, and he's a recovering addict, a survivor, and proof that it's possible. He's an executive leader, a keynote speaker, and resilient strategist who turned adversity into authority. For the past 2 decades, Jonathan's built a legacy of leadership, delivering results, driving transformation, and developing people at every level. And before we go any deeper than this, you've got a recent book out, and I'd just like to say, Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Joe, thanks for having me here. It's such a pleasure. Pleasure to be here with you.
Well, it's a pleasure. We were just talking ahead of time, and we've got a lot of similarities in our life experience. You've certainly become a lot more successful than me, but success is measured in a lot of ways. So I consider myself very successful in the things that I do. But I would really like to hear about your story. It sounds like you've had a journey that took you down to a dark place, and then you've pulled yourself up out of it, and you're using your experience to help others.
Yeah, Joe, first of all, again, thanks for having me here. And really, my story and my book is all about helping people and changing people's lives. And my story starts early on in my childhood, where I was 10 years old and told I was the man of the house.
Wow.
And and as proud as that of a moment that was for me, it was actually the start of a spiral that I would later learn that drove me down and took away my childhood, stripped me of that, trying to live up to those expectations. And imagine the pressure of a 10-year-old sitting here trying to live that of an adult, and they call it now a parentified child. And from there, through my teenage years, struggling, first of all, I grew up in South Central LA, and so I had a lot of adversity there, gang violence, drugs in the neighborhood. So it was my childhood, and where I lived was very challenging. And through all of that, by the time I'm 20 years old, I had been dipping, dabbling in marijuana and things, but I had a sister. One of my sisters committed suicide,
Wow.
and that moment basically changed my life. I didn't know how to manage grief because I didn't know how to manage my emotions as a child. And from there, first day, I tried crack cocaine.
Ooh. Yeah.
And yeah, trying to bury the grief. And from there, my life just spiraled out of control. And one of the things I say about my story is that, and in my book, is that my life hasn't been a straight line. It hasn't been a circle. It's been a spiral.
Hmm.
And that spiral can be a number of things. And my spiral consisted of drug addiction and homelessness, childhood trauma, there's child molestation, there's so many things there, a number of rehabs, and then success. But just kind of staying in the story, my drug addiction spiraled very quickly before I knew it. And there was a lot of denial that I had an addiction, family members trying to help me over and over. But nothing changed until I really made that decision that I wanted something different for my life. So after 3 rehabs and a psychiatric stay, I finally came to a point, this big breakthrough, where I was exhausted. I
Okay.
was totally exhausted with the life
Tired
I had
of it
been
all.
living. Yeah, tired
Had
of it all.
enough.
But through all of that, never giving up. And that's one thing I want people to recognize is never giving up.
Yeah.
That was key to my journey, no matter how many times I fell. And so turning my life around at that point after 1,592 days of drug addiction, homelessness, dysfunction. Yeah, I then changed my mindset and started to transform my life into what it is today. And trying to break myself out of this survival mode, which is where I got the title of my book, Surviving Jonathan. And
About that moment, because that's a critical point for people. I've heard a similar story from many people, many differences, but many substances, many doesn't even have to be a substance. It can be an activity. It can be whatever it is. An addiction's an addiction. But there's that place from when you make that decision where you get lifted up for a minute, you feel good because you've made that change and you can start to take agency of your own existence. But then the work begins. And
yeah,
that's when you talk about never giving up, I think that's one of the critical elements because you're weak as hell. You've made a moment of ownership of your own life. You've decided to start walking uphill out of the mud and the muck and all the sharp glass and all the stuff that you're stuck in. And it's hard as hell. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that moment in your life?
well, I say that, and in my book, I talk about how first it was the easiest thing for me was to stay right where I was.
Hmm.
That was by far the easiest thing. When I would think about what I would have to, the work I'd have to put into, just bringing my life back to a point of, functioning person in society. Forget all the success in career, just functioning.
Right.
Uh, as I as I say, it took a transformation for me to be able to walk into a temp agency to apply for a job for a warehouse job.
Okay.
So it was easy to stay stuck, but in that never giving up, as I was saying earlier, it was no matter how many times I would fall. And many times I knew I was going to. I went into rehab knowing that the moment I got out, I was going to get high.
Wow.
The entire time I was in there, one rehab out of the three for 30 days, I knew I was going to get high. People would bring me money. Hey, do you need a few dollars while you're in here? Yes. And I was just stacking that money, knowing the day that I got out, I was going to get high. And within hours, I was high. But one takeaway in that, and this is for people going through whatever addiction, whatever challenges, people, families, having, family members in this situation is that many times it takes several times. It's not a one and done type of situation. If it is, that's very rare for someone to fall and just, to get their life straight and just keep continuing without falling.
Now let me ask you, when you got high after being clean for a month or however long it was, did you have a moment of guilt or did you just go, here I am, I'm back to where I want to be?
That's a great question. Lots of guilt because one, going into the rehabs, you're learning resources and tools to help you through the addiction and to reach out when you're having those urges. And for me, I sat silent. Silence is something that I sat in since my childhood. And so going out and using and knowing you had resources and tools and people to call, there's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of guilt because of people that supported you while you were there,
Hmm.
and guilt just in what you were doing to yourself.
Right.
So the greatest
Becoming
person that
aware of really what you're doing,
yeah,
through this process, even if you don't want to, you're looking to see that, there's a choice involved here.
that's absolutely a choice. I had a choice in the matter. So lots of guilt, lots. And I would just say this, that guilt led me to want to use more
Oh
because I'm
no.
trying to bury the pain and the guilt
Oh no.
and take
Oh,
that away. So
I was
it
hoping
drove
it'd
the
go the other
addiction.
way. Yeah. Wow.
No,
Okay.
it can backfire.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it absolutely could.
So when was there was a point where you finally made you took that last hit and that was it, and you never did it again. Where was that moment?
Yeah, that moment, actually, I remember I was in my apartment and I had gotten high and my body had began to reject the drugs.
Oh,
And so the high was no longer a good high. It was a lot more that was that it entailed, vomiting, things like that. So I remember getting high and sitting there physically feeling like crap.
mhm.
And at that moment, I actually looked at the drugs and I just said, there has to be a better way. Jonathan, you've been through so much and you've tried so many times. And, it's either now or never, because if you continue down this path, there's, I'm going to die at this point,
Right.
is what I felt.
Yeah.
So it became a life or death moment for me. And I chose life.
Nice.
I chose life in that moment.
And so
Yeah.
I assume that, you started doing different things to take your time up. I mean, I know a lot of addiction is just about passing time, getting through the next day and, not feeling. And, but after a minute of sobriety on your own without somebody kind of making you do it, all of a sudden there's all this time you got.
Oh, plenty of time. I'm sitting here with no job, you
Right.
know, nothing but time and mental space, because I spent so much time focusing on how to get high,
Right.
how to get my next hit. And so what do I do with that energy? What do I do with that mind at
Yeah.
that time? So for me, it was changing my habits
Mm,
and really recognizing my triggers and spending the time to fight those triggers,
okay.
spending the time to change those habits. I couldn't keep $20 in my pocket.
Right.
So getting a job, working in warehouses and, shipping, receiving and different places I worked, I get a paycheck, and I was married at the time. And so I'd give my wife my paycheck and just give me $5 or $10, you know, just for gas in my car. And I smoked at
Yeah.
the time and a pack of cigarettes, right?
All right.
So it was really breaking those habits. It was really recognizing my triggers and spending time fighting that. And believe it or not, that occupies a lot of your mental space.
Oh yeah.
And so it took a few years of me really transforming my life and getting myself to a point where I'm functioning again, rebuilding relationships and trust, kind of going through some of the 12-step program. And so, but over time, 1 month, 90 days, 60 days, and reaching that year point mark in my life was significant to a place that I never thought I'd be.
Nice. So, were you married while you were going through the addiction, or did you get married subsequently?
I was married going through the addiction. Right after my sister passed, I was engaged already, and I felt like life is too short, and I didn't want to wait any longer. So I was married at 20 years old, and so with that, and I had two stepkids.
Hmm.
So not along with my bringing myself down in my life, I also had that on my back as well. What I was carrying, not so much what I was carrying, but the way that I was bringing this dysfunction into their lives. And so, but I had someone in my life that really stuck with me through thick and thin, and
She didn't
which
share
is
that addiction with you, but she.
no,
Okay, good, good.
she did not. And so, yeah, so that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, yeah, I
But
get it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it,
Well,
it,
let's
it
fast
is.
forward a little bit. You went from making the decision and staying the course, and then all of a sudden, at one point, you made a leap forward. Why don't you tell me about that? Hi, this is Joe Grumbine, and I wanted to share an update. The platform that hosts this podcast has made some changes to the subscriber settings, and we have a number of subscriber only episodes that we offer to the supporters. And for a minimum of $3 a month, we can get you signed up. And if you're already signed up and you're having some kind of trouble locating these episodes in the other platforms, I would say maybe the best answer is to unsubscribe and then resubscribe. I'm sorry for the hassle. I don't have any way to make a change, but I'm very grateful for all the support. Thank you.
So again, as I was sharing earlier about getting my life and transforming enough to get to a point where I could walk into a temp agency, because I had no skills, I had no formal education, and just walking into a temp agency to see what kind of jobs I can find. And I knew I had, you know, talent, if someone would give me a chance. And so I walked into a temp agency, got a job in television and broadcasting, and where, television signals are delivered behind the signal to bring programming to people's television screens.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment I walked into that job, I knew within 2 hours, this is what I wanted to do in life.
All right.
Immediately, I discovered a passion.
Nice.
And I didn't know that, I would stay with it because I had quit so many times in my life before. I would sabotage myself. And that's where the book title, Surviving Jonathan,
Yeah.
and getting out of my own way. But through that, within my first year, I became a permanent employee within that company within 90 days. And within 7 months, I was a supervisor,
Wow.
supervising people that had been working there 5 to 10 years. And
How'd they take to
just,
that?
you know, I guess I had really shown and proven myself to a lot of people that I had support from
Yeah.
those individuals. I had support from management.
Nice.
But here's one thing that's key. They never knew about my past.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay. I
Good
went
on
for
you for
many
that.
decades. Yeah, I'll get to that in the story. But I went on to just achieve 7 promotions in 14 years. The first company I worked at, within the first 5 years, I ended up managing the department. I started as a temp, managing 60 to 70 people. And at that point, I just felt like there's nothing I can't do. And that was the same thing I told myself during my drug addiction. If I could just overcome this, there isn't anything in life that I just can't do.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan, this will be the hardest thing you would ever have to overcome. And to this day, that still remains.
Yeah.
So I excelled, and 14 years later, I was appointed board appointed president and CEO of a telecommunications company and doing satellite services
Wow.
for customers around the world.
Nice.
So that was, my success story,
Sure.
and where all my dysfunction and pain became perspective, and that perspective became purpose, and that's where I am today.
Now, it seems that you've chosen to take your experience to help others now. But what point did you feel that that was a tool you were going to use and use in that way?
Ooh, yeah. I didn't realize that. I knew probably midway through my career, I knew that I was in a position to help people,
Mm-hmm.
but I also still felt like I was struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Although I had achieved the success, there was still a lot of unresolved issues, unresolved healing that needed to take place before I could even help anyone else. Also, there was a fear
Mm-hmm.
of me and people knowing more about me.
Right.
And so throughout my career until I wrote my book, that was published last year, no one in my industry knew this side of Jonathan.
Wow. And how many years
um,
total has that been?
30 years.
Wow.
30 years last year. My former bosses, board members, employees, no one ever knew. So a lot of fear and coming forward, a lot of vulnerability and being able to tell that story. But I knew that it needed to be told in order for it to have impact and for it to me to get to a place where I was really providing purpose to people's lives.
So a year ago or so, or probably closer to 2 years ago, you decided, I'm going to tell this story. I mean, A lot of people, I'd say this to a lot of authors. We have a lot of authors on the show, and many of us have a story, have a book in our that we could write, but very few of us actually write the book. And what you didn't have formal education, formal training. You're an entrepreneur. You've figured things out as you go. I'm very similar in that way. What told you, okay, I could write a book that people want to read?
Well, besides people telling me you need to write a book,
Okay, all
because
right,
I had been told that so many times throughout my life,
yeah,
you need to write a book.
uh-huh,
But it'd go to one ear out the other, and
sure,
I didn't really think I had the skills or capable of. I mean, I could do it, but would it really be a story? Could I really write it in the right way?
yeah,
And so it took me 6 years to write the book. And what started as a story became more of I needed the story to have more impact. And I needed there to be not just my story, but what can people do when they're in similar situations, whether it's addiction and whether that's, you know, habits of weight loss, whether that's addiction, whether that's
right,
gambling, whether that's whatever it may be,
whatever.
whether it's career path and leadership. So I then started taking more time to write and develop myself so that I could articulate the story. And in that process, I learned more about myself. And I was able to map my life out and why I became the person I am. Why do I struggle in relationships? Why am I always living in survival mode? So a lot of evolution came from writing the book. And over time, I guess I just got better at it
Yeah,
to
I
where,
like it. Took you to
and
do
telling my
it, practice.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I had enough time to teach myself too. So,
All right, all right.
yeah.
I love the light in your background says never give up. That's my mantra as well through.
Yeah. That's what my saying is: never give up, never give up.
Yeah.
Yeah, never. So,
So I the notes that I have say that you do some mentoring and public speaking, and I'm curious. Obviously, you got a leadership position, so that puts you in a spot where people want to learn from you. What sort of people do you take on in that role?
well, mentoring. So there's different things. So I mentor, I coach, and then there's speaking. So mentoring, I don't really have a specific person that I take on. I think it's more of, what whom I've connected to, or, who can I help?
Hmm.
But that's all ages and people that are struggling. It doesn't have to be, again, addiction. It could be career path.
Oh yeah,
It could be a number of things. I feel like my life is, and that's where in my book title, the 360 degrees of resilience, because
yeah,
it's full circle, it's full spectrum of your life and all aspects of what happened in mine. So that mentoring it's there for whomever I feel where I'm connected. I feel I have to really say. And then coaching, I also coach people from leadership to career to, young adults. Right now I'm coaching my son through something,
yeah,
so
yeah.
so I really combine the mentor and the coaching. And then the speaking, I go out, I speak where there are, again, people that I feel like can be inspirational.
Uh-huh.
I speak where I can provide leadership development, where I can provide insight for organizations looking to build resilience within their organizations, within their teams, within their operations. So it's a pretty wide scope there. But most importantly, I'm where it feels purposeful.
Nice.
Through all my success, I come to realize that that wasn't providing me purpose. And writing this book and helping people is what does it for me. So
So the book itself, why don't you tell me kind of in a nutshell? I mean, I know that there's a lot of personal stories in it, but tell me, about the book. What is the book all about?
the book, Surviving Jonathan, the 360 Degrees of Resilience, it's it's a book that what started, it's a combination of a memoir versus professional growth.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggle with that because it's like, okay, usually you have to stay in one lane, but that's not my story. My story is not a straight line.
Right.
It's not a circle. As I started earlier, my life is a spiral. And that 360 represents the spiral. That
Okay.
360 covers, and the book covers emotional resilience, it's mental, it's physical, it's relational, it's identity. And that's what the book covers. It's all of those areas of someone's life, of my life. And in the book, there are takeaways and exercises that people can use to help them where they are, where they're going, where they've been, or where they may have a family member. And yes, the stories are there to let people know that you're not alone. There's someone like you in different areas of your life, and that someone is me. And the book is very raw. I don't hold anything back
Okay.
in telling my stories, and that scared me for a minute, for a while, as I was writing the book.
Right.
Jonathan, are you actually going to
Wonderful.
share this story? But I needed to,
Yeah.
for my own healing and the impact it could make. So surviving Jonathan is really could be a mirror for someone surviving themselves. Um,
Nice. Well,
and
I'm
I am
looking
starting to
forward
build a
to reading
community
it.
around that. I'm
Absolutely.
sorry.
I says I'm looking forward to reading it. I have a copy and I've glanced through it a little bit, but I'm gonna dive in. And it's interesting. Many of my guests, we have a conversation, we get to know each other a little bit, and oftentimes they'll come back and go deeper into a topic. And I certainly would hope that we could do that one day.
Oh, I absolutely would love to. Absolutely.
Well, as always, I run out of time before I run out of questions, but is there a thought that you would like to leave our listeners with that would kind of sum up your whole presence?
Yeah, I would actually. One thing is that you don't have to overcome your story. You learn how to use it. And resilience isn't circling back to what was or where you used to be. It's becoming something new. And the hardest thing in life or person you'll ever have to face is yourself. And holding that mirror up and looking in is a start. And growth starts with the moment you stop blaming and start accepting accountability for your life. And that is what changed my life. And that's one thing I'd like to kind of leave your listeners with. And I'd love to come back on your show and explore more and
I would
how I
love
can
that
help.
as well. Well, tell
Yes,
us,
absolutely.
how do we get a hold of you? How do we find your book and all that good stuff?
My book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. You can find it on my website at mrjonathancrawford.com. You can find me on LinkedIn at mrjonathancrawford.com, as well as on Instagram, mrjonathancrawford.com, and Facebook. Same thing, mrjonathancrawford.com.
Fantastic. Well, Mr. Jonathan Crawford, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and you have such an inspiring way about you of taking a real difficult chunk of life and turning it into a tool that can help anybody do anything.
Well, it's been such a pleasure, and I really appreciate you having me and giving me this opportunity to share my story with the world. And I look forward to more.
Fantastic. Well, this has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine. I'd like to thank all of our listeners for making this show possible, and we will see you next time. This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.